In this video, we're going to be talking about our V35 project tuning of the Sigma Cine lineup. If you don't know anything about the Cine lineup, there's 11 focal lengths. They're all very fast. They're all full frame. You might know them from shooting movies like Top Gun, which is great. Now the Sigmas are really great neutral performing lens. They're actually very popular. They go out a lot as they are from our rental house. But for those wanting something a little more interesting out of their Sigmas, we're now offering tunings on this lens. Now again, with a modern lens, you're gonna have a lot of things that are corrected from a vintage lens, like breathing and chromatic aberration, performance across the board. So it's a great place to start to inject some of those looks, but not fully take away some of the other things to replicate vintage lenses. So you're gonna get a lot of that look, but without a lot of the sacrifices of your vintage lens. So let's talk about the Sigma. Right off the bat, we were heavily inspired by tons of aesthetic properties of the old Kowa full-frame spherical set. Now this set had some really interesting softening going wide open, some crazy flares, some what I would call one-of-a-kind textural bokeh, some heavy fall off around the edges, and just in general, very pleasing neutral skin tones, very low contrast, wide open. We're talking wide open. As you stop down, the Kowas clean up very well, but we wanted to emulate a lot of that look wide open, so we've taken as much of that as we could and put that into our Sigma, noting that obviously it'll never be a one-to-one replication. The best we can do is say we were inspired heavily by watching tons of source material from the Kowa full-frame spherical. So let's get into what this lens is. So the Sigma Cine, we've gone over and just redesigned the outside shell. It's still the factory shell, but we've had our way with it to make it just look a little bit more interesting and flashy. So with that, we've taken, between our spacings and our coatings and all of our magic we do, we've definitely given this lens a more magical, wide open characteristic, way heavy in the look. It's very low contrast, a lot of bloom and softness going on, some very heavy fall off from out of focus edge areas. Not to mention, we've softened up the focus transition just a little bit to make foreground and background of your focal plane just a little bit more softer and a little bit more subtle. Great for shooting faces and portraiture, but also just really nostalgic if you're gonna run a project with a lot of film grain. These lenses look really, 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 really great. I personally love them a lot, and not to mention, there's so many focal lengths available in the Sigma set. To start with, you've got a large range to kind of have a huge set built out of these. Now, they're 95mm fronts, which is great, super lightweight rig, put them on pretty much anything and still create a very lightweight footprint for yourself and your set and your crew. And outside of that, you do still retain some of the metadata characteristics if you have a PL mount with metadata. So that is a great thing to know if you're doing volume or anything that requires metadata. We've still kept those electronics as accurate as possible. If you have a used set of Sigmas, go ahead and get a hold of sales at V35project.com and we can evaluate your lenses and get them into our queue for your modification process. Now, the cost of the Sigmas for the modification process, which includes the exterior finish, is around $27.50 USD. Turnaround time on these is now quite a bit faster. If you have an order once we receive it, we're looking at roughly 6 to 7 weeks turnaround time, unless you want to pay for priority, in which case we can get that down to maybe 3 or 4 weeks and get you moving through the line. So with that is our V35 project tunings of the Sigma Cine Primes.